They say revenge is a dish best served cold. What they don't tell you is how satisfying it feels when you're the one serving it on a silver platter, garnished with your former boss's career prospects and seasoned with $30 million worth of client contracts. My name is Maya Rodriguez, and this is the story of how I turned betrayal into the sweetest victory of my professional life. It started on a Tuesday morning that felt like any other, except for the email that would change everything. The subject line read, "Performance Review Meeting, Urgent." I should have known something was wrong when my boss, Jonathan Hayes, couldn't look me in the eye as I walked into the conference room at Meridian Financial Solutions. For 3 years, I had been the top performer in our wealth management division. While my colleagues struggled to meet their quarterly targets, I consistently exceeded mine by at least 20%. I had built relationships with some of the most lucrative clients in the city, managed portfolios worth hundreds of millions, and personally brought in over $60 million in new business during my tenure. The numbers spoke for themselves, but apparently, numbers weren't enough. "Maya, please have a seat," Jonathan said, his voice unusually formal. Beside him sat Patricia Vance, the HR director whose smile never quite reached her eyes. The air in the room felt thick with unspoken tension, and I could feel my pulse quickening despite my attempt to remain calm. "I've been looking forward to this review," I said, settling into my chair with confidence. "Especially considering our conversation last month about my promotion and salary adjustment." Jonathan's face shifted almost imperceptibly, but I caught it. That tiny flinch that told me everything I needed to know before he even opened his mouth. "Well, Maya, that's actually what we need to discuss." The words that followed hit me like a physical blow. Budget constraints, restructuring, changing priorities, performance concerns that had never been mentioned before. And then, the final insult. "We've decided to go in a different direction with your position." I sat there, stunned into silence, as they explained the terms of my voluntary resignation. 2 weeks severance pay, which was laughable considering my contributions to the company. A non-disclosure agreement that would prevent me from discussing the circumstances of my departure. And most crushing of all, the revelation that my promised 50% salary increase and promotion to senior vice president had been given to Marcus Thompson, a mediocre performer who happened to be Jonathan's former college roommate. "This is a joke, right?" I finally managed to say, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "You're firing your top performer to promote someone who barely meets his targets?" Patricia leaned forward with that same artificial smile. "Maya, we appreciate everything you've done for Meridian, but we feel that Marcus brings a different skill set to the role." Different skill set? Code 4, he's a man with connections. I had seen this play out countless times in corporate America, but I never thought it would happen to me. Not after everything I'd accomplished. Not after the late nights, the weekend calls, the sacrificed personal time that had built this company's reputation in the wealth management sector. "I need some time to review these documents," I said, gathering the papers they had slid across the table. "Of course," Jonathan replied, finally meeting my eyes. "Take all the time you need. We'd like this transition to be as smooth as possible." Smooth. As if there was anything smooth about betrayal wrapped in corporate speak. I walked back to my office in a daze, my mind racing through the implications of what had just happened. 3 years of my life, countless sacrifices, and this was how it ended. But as I sat at my desk, staring at the stack of client files that represented millions of dollars in managed assets, something inside me shifted. The shock began to crystallize into something much more dangerous: determination. I opened my laptop and began to type. Not my resignation letter, but something far more important. A detailed inventory of every client relationship I had built, every connection I had fostered, and every piece of business intelligence I had gathered during my time at Meridian. If they thought they could discard me like yesterday's news, they were about to learn a very expensive lesson. My first call was to David Kim, a tech entrepreneur whose portfolio I had grown from $5 million to $22 million over 2 years. David had become more than a client. He was a friend who trusted my judgment implicitly. Maya, great to hear from you. David's voice was warm through the phone. How are things at Meridian? Actually, David, that's why I'm calling. I'm leaving Meridian, and I wanted to discuss your options. There was a pause. Leaving, but you're the only reason I'm with that firm. I appreciate that, and I want to make sure you're taken care of during this transition. What I didn't tell David in that conversation was that I had already begun laying the groundwork for my exit strategy months earlier. The promotion promises had been dangled in front of me for over a year, and I had learned to read the political winds at Meridian. I had quietly obtained my necessary licenses to operate independently and had been nurturing relationships with other firms, just in case. My second call was to Amelia Chen, the CEO of a successful pharmaceutical company whose investment portfolio had tripled under my management. Amelia was known for her direct communication style and fierce loyalty to people who delivered results. Maya, darling, what's this I hear about you leaving Meridian? She said before I could even explain the situation. Word travels fast, I replied. In our circles, everything travels fast, especially when it's about someone as competent as you. What's your next move? I'm exploring several options. I wanted to ensure you're aware of the situation and comfortable with the transition arrangements. Comfortable? Honey? The only thing I'm comfortable with is having you manage my money. If you're leaving, we need to talk about where I'm going to. That conversation lasted an hour, and by the end, Amelia had made her position crystal clear. She would be following me wherever I went, and she would be happy to provide references to expedite my transition to a new firm. My third call was the most challenging. Harrison Blackwood was old money, conservative, and notoriously difficult to please. When I first took over his account from a departing colleague, he had been skeptical of my abilities. It took me 18 months to earn his trust, but once I did, he became one of my most profitable relationships. His portfolio alone was worth $12 million. Mr. Blackwood, this is Maya Rodriguez. Maya, excellent timing. I was just reviewing last quarter's performance report. Outstanding work, as usual. Thank you, sir. I'm calling because I need to inform you of some changes at Meridian that will affect your account. I explained the situation diplomatically, without revealing the personal betrayal I'd experienced. Harrison listened without interruption, a habit I'd learned to appreciate during our working relationship. Maya, in 40 years of investing, I've learned that good advisors are rarer than profitable startups. If you're leaving Meridian, I assume you have a plan? I do, sir. I'm finalizing details with Pinnacle Wealth Management. They're a boutique firm with an excellent reputation and a focus on personalized service. Send me the information. If they meet my standards, you'll have my account transferred within the week. The conversations continued throughout the day. Client after client expressed their loyalty to me personally rather than to Meridian. By the end of the week, I had secured commitments from clients representing over $30 million in managed assets. The three largest accounts, David, Amelia, and Harrison, made up the bulk of that figure. But several smaller clients also indicated their intention to follow me. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Marcus were scrambling to understand the scope of the client exodus. The first sign of panic came when Jonathan called me into his office on Friday afternoon. Maya, we need to discuss the client transition process. Of course, I've been very thorough in documenting all account details and client preferences. That's not what I mean. His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Several clients have contacted us about transferring their accounts. This is highly irregular. I maintained my professional composure. Jonathan, these clients have established relationships with me personally. It's natural that they would want to understand their options during a transition. Maya, you signed a non-compete agreement when you started here. I'm aware of my contractual obligations. I'm not soliciting clients or sharing proprietary information. I'm simply responding to their inquiries about my departure. The legal technicality was important. I'd never directly asked clients to follow me or spoken negatively about Meridian. I'd simply been honest about my situation and allowed them to draw their own conclusions. The clients were initiating the conversations about transfers, not me. Over the weekend, I received calls from two more clients who had heard about my departure through the network of relationships that formed the backbone of high-end wealth management. Word was spreading organically, and the momentum was building beyond anything I had initially planned. Monday morning brought a frantic call from Patricia in HR. Maya, we need to meet immediately. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The conference room felt different this time. Jonathan looked haggard. Patricia seemed genuinely worried, and Marcus was conspicuously absent from the discussion. Maya, we may have been hasty in our decision, Jonathan began. I almost laughed. Almost. Hasty. We'd like to discuss the possibility of you staying with Meridian. Perhaps we can revisit the promotion and salary adjustment we discussed. The promotion that was given to Marcus? Patricia cleared her throat. There may be room for multiple senior positions in the department. For a moment, I considered their offer. The vindictive part of me wanted to hear them grovel, to quantify exactly how much my departure was going to cost them. But the professional part of me knew that trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired with promises and panic-driven promotions. I appreciate the offer, but I've already committed to Pinnacle Wealth Management. My last day will be Friday, as originally planned. Maya, you're making a mistake, Jonathan said, his voice taking on a threatening tone. The finance industry is smaller than you think. Word gets around about advisors who don't honor their commitments to their firms. You're absolutely right, Jonathan. Word does get around, especially about firms that don't honor their commitments to their top performers. That evening, I received a call from Richard Sterling, the managing partner at Pinnacle Wealth Management. Richard was a legend in the industry, known for building successful careers and treating his advisors with respect and transparency. Maya, I've been hearing interesting things about your situation at Meridian. I hope they're accurate things. Richard. Well, 3 of the city's most successful investors called me personally to recommend you. That doesn't happen often. I'm flattered by their confidence. More than flattered. I hope. I'd like to make you an offer. The package Richard presented was everything Meridian had promised and failed to deliver. A 50% increase over my current salary, equity participation in the firm, and complete autonomy over my client relationships. But more important than the financial terms was the respect and trust implicit in the offer. Richard, I accept. Excellent. When can you start? 2 weeks from Monday. Perfect. I'll have our legal team prepare the paperwork and coordinate with your client's transfer requests. My final week at Meridian was a study in corporate dysfunction. Jonathan alternated between hostile confrontation and desperate attempts at reconciliation. Marcus, who had been so eager to claim my promotion, now looked like a man who had realized he was inheriting a sinking ship. The other advisors in the department watched the unfolding drama with a mixture of fascination and concern for their own job security. The client transfers proceeded smoothly. Despite Meridian's attempts to complicate the process, David Kim's transition was completed first, followed quickly by Amelia and Harrison. By Thursday, the paperwork for the remaining clients was in progress, and it became clear that Meridian was losing not just $30 million in assets, but also the credibility that came with those high-profile relationships. Patricia made one final attempt to salvage the situation. Maya, we're prepared to offer you a partnership track position. Patricia. With respect, I don't think Meridian understands what partnership means. True partners don't surprise each other with termination meetings. On Friday afternoon, I cleaned out my office while Jonathan watched from his doorway. The personal items fit into a single box. A few photos, some books, and a coffee mug that had been a gift from David after our first successful year together. 3 years of professional achievement reduced to the contents of a cardboard box. As I walked toward the elevator, Jonathan called out to me. Maya, you won't succeed at Pinnacle. You're making a career-ending mistake. I turned back to face him, and for the first time since this ordeal began, I allowed myself to smile. Jonathan, I've already succeeded. The question is whether you can succeed without me. The elevator doors closed on his stunned expression, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't realized I had been carrying. Monday morning at Pinnacle Wealth Management felt like stepping into a parallel universe where competence was rewarded and loyalty was reciprocated. Richard Sterling greeted me personally and introduced me to the team with genuine enthusiasm. My office was twice the size of my space at Meridian, with a view of the city that reminded me why I had fallen in love with this business in the first place. The first month was a whirlwind of activity. Client meetings, portfolio reviews, and strategic planning sessions filled my days. David, Amelia, and Harrison expressed their satisfaction with the transition, and their confidence in my decision validated the risk I had taken. More importantly, they began referring new clients to me, understanding that my success at Pinnacle would directly benefit their own investment outcomes. 3 months after leaving Meridian, I received an unexpected call from Marcus Thompson. "Maya, I hope you don't mind me calling." "Hello, Marcus. How are things at Meridian?" "Honestly, they're terrible. We've lost 6 more major clients since you left. And Jonathan is blaming everyone except himself." "I'm sorry to hear that. Maya, I need to be honest with you. I never asked for your promotion. Jonathan offered it to me. And I was stupid enough to think I could fill your shoes." The conversation continued for 20 minutes. And by the end, Marcus had asked if Pinnacle might have an opening for an experienced advisor looking for a fresh start. I promised to speak with Richard about potential opportunities. 6 months after my departure from Meridian, the industry publications began reporting on the firm's struggles. Client defections had accelerated beyond my initial group, as word spread about the circumstances of my departure, and the quality of service began to decline under the pressure of reorganization. Jonathan Hayes was reportedly exploring new opportunities, which everyone understood to be corporate speak for looking for a job before he gets fired. The sweet irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. In their attempt to save money by eliminating my salary increase, Meridian had lost not just $30 million in client assets, but also their reputation as a stable and trustworthy wealth management firm. The short-term savings had resulted in long-term devastation. My success at Pinnacle, meanwhile, continued to accelerate. The assets under my management had grown to over $50 million as existing clients increased their investments and new referrals materialized. Richard Sterling had fast-tracked my partnership consideration, recognizing that my client relationships and industry knowledge were valuable assets for the firm's expansion plans. 1 year after leaving Meridian, I was featured in Financial Advisor magazine as one of the rising stars under 35. The article detailed my career progression and success at Pinnacle, but diplomatically avoided discussing the circumstances of my departure from my previous firm. The photo showed me in my office, smiling confidently while reviewing client portfolios, the city skyline visible through the windows behind me. David Kim framed a copy of the magazine cover and presented it to me during our quarterly review meeting. "Maya, I want you to know how proud I am to have followed you to Pinnacle. My portfolio has never performed better, and I sleep well at night knowing you're managing my investments." "Thank you, David. That means more to me than any magazine article. I hope you realize that what Meridian did to you was the best thing that could have happened to your career." He was right, though it had taken time for me to see it that way. The betrayal at Meridian had been devastating in the moment, but it had also been liberating. It forced me to realize my true value in the marketplace and gave me the motivation to pursue opportunities I might never have considered otherwise. Amelia had a different perspective when we discussed the situation during a dinner meeting. "Maya, you turned their betrayal into your launching pad. That takes courage and strategic thinking that most people don't possess." "I had excellent teachers," I replied, thinking of the clients who had supported me during the transition. "No, you had excellent instincts. We just recognized what Meridian was too stupid to see." 2 years after leaving Meridian, I learned that the firm had been acquired by a larger competitor in what industry insiders described as a distressed sale. Jonathan Hayes had indeed left the company, reportedly taking a position with a small regional firm at a significant reduction in salary and responsibility. Marcus Thompson had accepted my referral to Pinnacle and was thriving in an environment that valued performance over politics. My partnership at Pinnacle was formalized in a ceremony attended by clients, colleagues, and industry leaders. Richard Sterling's introduction highlighted my contributions to the firm's growth and my reputation for integrity and results. Maya Rodriguez represents everything we value at Pinnacle Wealth Management. Richard told the assembled group, intelligence, dedication, and most importantly, the ability to build lasting relationships based on trust and mutual respect. As I stood at the podium to address the audience, I caught sight of David, Amelia, and Harrison in the front row. These three clients, whose loyalty had made my career transition possible, were smiling with the satisfaction of people who had made an excellent investment decision. 2 years ago, I learned an important lesson about the difference between being valued and being valuable. I began. Sometimes, the greatest favor someone can do for your career is to force you to realize your true worth. The applause was warm and genuine, but the real reward was the knowledge that I had built something lasting and meaningful. The revenge I had taken against Meridian wasn't vindictive or destructive. It was simply living well and succeeding on my own terms. In quiet moments, I sometimes wondered what would have happened if Jonathan had honored his promises about the promotion and salary increase. Would I still be at Meridian, working in a culture that saw me as dispensable despite my contributions? Would I have ever realized my potential for independence and leadership? The answer, I realized, didn't matter. What mattered was that their betrayal had become my opportunity, their loss had become my gain, and their moment of short-sighted cost-cutting had become the foundation of my long-term success. 3 years after leaving Meridian, I received an unexpected email from Jonathan Hayes. The subject line read, "Congratulations on your success." The message was brief and professionally worded, acknowledging my achievements at Pinnacle and expressing regret about how things had ended between us. I read the email twice, considering how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it entirely, while another part wanted to craft a response that would make clear exactly how much his decision had cost both of us. In the end, I chose a different path. Jonathan, thank you for your message. I appreciate you reaching out. I hope you're finding success and satisfaction in your current role. Best regards, Maya. Short, professional, and free of the bitterness that might have colored my response in earlier months. I had learned that the best revenge wasn't rubbing their faces in my success. It was simply succeeding and moving forward without looking back. Today, as I sit in my corner office at Pinnacle Wealth Management, reviewing portfolios worth over $75 million and planning strategic initiatives for the firm's continued growth, I sometimes think about that Tuesday morning when my world seemed to collapse. The betrayal that felt so devastating at the time had actually been the catalyst for the most successful period of my career. The clients who trusted me enough to follow me to Pinnacle had grown their investments substantially. David's portfolio had reached $35 million. Amelia's pharmaceutical fortune had doubled. And Harrison's conservative investments had outperformed his most optimistic projections. Their success was my success, and their loyalty had been repaid with results. More importantly, I had learned to trust my own judgment and value my own contributions. The imposter syndrome that had occasionally plagued me at Meridian had disappeared entirely, replaced by the confidence that comes from proving yourself in the marketplace. The $30 million in client assets that left Meridian with me had been just the beginning. Word-of-mouth referrals, industry recognition, and consistent performance had attracted new clients and additional investments from existing ones. What started as a defensive reaction to betrayal had evolved into an offensive strategy for building a world-class wealth management practice. As I prepared for my next client meeting, I reflected on the unexpected gift that Jonathan Hayes and Meridian Financial Solutions had given me. They had promised me a 50% raise and then fired me instead. In response, I had taken 3 clients worth $30 million and built them into a portfolio worth more than double that amount. But the real victory wasn't measured in dollars or client assets. It was measured in respect, autonomy, and the satisfaction of building something meaningful with people who valued my contributions. They had taught me that sometimes, the best thing that can happen to your career is being forced to leave a place that doesn't deserve you. The revenge was complete, but it tasted nothing like I had expected. Instead of bitter satisfaction, It was sweet with the flavor of vindication and success. They had underestimated me, and I had proven them spectacularly wrong. That, I realized, was the most perfect revenge of all.